Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to do a 2024 DeSantis versus Biden election prediction. This is assuming Trump decides to not run in 2024, which I do think he will, and I do think he should, but this is under the assumption he doesn't, and this is what a DeSantis versus Biden matchup would look like. Now, again, Biden is getting old. He's completely out of it, and he has no clue what's going on half the time, but he will likely be the candidate in 2024 pretty much no matter what, except for some weird scenarios where he might die, because the Democratic pool of candidates is atrocious. There is no one really better than him, and that really speaks volumes about the party itself right now. So we'll look at this. Now, this is under the assumption that DeSantis polls similarly to Trump. I'd imagine he would likely do fairly similar to what Trump would do. He might get some more moderates out in some cases, but not as many of the more staunch conservatives because of the kind of loyalty to Trump. But I do think he would do fairly similar to Trump in some regards. He might do better in certain areas and worse in others. So looking at the polls, most of the actual electoral polls for the general election currently have Trump within a point or two of the popular vote. That is only popular vote, nothing to do with electoral college. So that is important to consider because you don't need that to win. Now, there's many where Trump is actually ahead as well. As you can see, all of these ones have Trump ahead of both Biden or Harris. Harris is more unpopular, but it continues on to the other page. Either way, assuming that data and considering the 2020 election and what trends were like, also considering current polling data and approval and popularity of Biden going into it, we can kind of break down and see how this election would look. So we'll start by filling out the safe states. Everyone knows which states are safe. I don't need to say each one. But these are fairly explanatory. Now, there might be some disagreement on at least the Ohio one from some, but it will be safe. DeSantis does have a little more appeal amongst suburban voters, I think, than Trump might, which will help him in places around here. You know, the more suburban regions, that will just kind of increase his overall margins in certain locations. But that being said, I think that would mean that Ohio itself would be a safe state along with Iowa. And yeah, those would be the safe for the Republican. Now, safe for Democrat are fairly self-explanatory as well. I don't need to explain these ones to anybody either. These are the safe state margins. So yes, it's closer right now for Biden, but that's just safe states. That's not accounting for the overall likeliness that most of the remaining states will go for DeSantis. So Florida, his home state, it would be probably a likely Republican margin. I'd say around 8 points, maybe 6 at the lowest, but either way, the state is fast trending to the right. We saw in the 2020 election, Trump won it by 3-something points, which is the largest any candidate has really won the state in a while. It's been a swing state for so long. We look closer. In Miami-Dade, one of the more important counties, it is shifting to the right. There's a lot of Cuban vote there. That could even be within winning margin for DeSantis with his popularity. And the state itself over the last few years has been trending further and further to the right. Trump won it in 2016. He won it by more in 2020 despite the national environment. DeSantis would pull it off, also being the former governor of the state. Texas would also be likely in this case. And I also think North Carolina would be likely. Now, North Carolina, a little stagnant. It could go a little closer, maybe in a lean margin, but I think it'll rebound a bit, especially with the suburban support that DeSantis could potentially bring in. And I think in a lean margin, Georgia would go Republican. Virginia would be lean, because again, the suburban approval would help a bit in the Northern Virginia area. Not a lot, so it wouldn't get much closer, but it depends. Maybe the state's shifted more than we thought. With Youngkin winning, maybe it will have an impact that we don't know. I also think Colorado would be a likely, New Mexico a lean, or not lean, yeah, lean, and Minnesota lean. And those are all the leans. Now, in this cycle, I do think Arizona would go back to DeSantis, especially if Kari Lake and Masters win. I think DeSantis wins it. Probably 3 or 4 points. The state might start trending to the right again, assuming some good America First policy is put in place by Kari Lake in 2022, and that continues into the 2024 election. And I do think with the trends in Nevada that DeSantis would be able to win it. I've done a breakdown already on Nevada and how it's trending and how it's shifting and why Republicans will win it. And I do think that trend will continue going into an actual general in 2024. Lombardo and Laxalt are both good candidates. They're both very likely to win their elections, and I do think they will. That will ultimately have an impact long term, assuming they do a decent job as governor and senator, or even a good job, which I think they will. Based on their policy, based on their history, based on what I know about them, they should. That will hopefully push the state further to the right and probably by a 2 to 3 point margin. Now, DeSantis only has to win one of these 4 states, or these 2. Now, that's not as likely, but either way, DeSantis is already very likely to win it, and I do think he probably wins it no matter what in this scenario. I don't see a case where after Biden's overall approval and what polling looks like for him, as well as Democrats, even if it rebounds a bit from where it is right now, I don't think Biden would be able to get every single state here. And as a result, I think in a lean margin, Wisconsin would go for DeSantis. And I think the same would happen in Pennsylvania and Nebraska's district. But New Hampshire would be tilt. And I think Maine at large would be tilt. It would get closer, but this would be very close. This would be a pretty big victory for DeSantis. And I think in the end, Michigan, it is trending right, very slightly. It is a very established Democrat state in some ways, Gretchen Whitmer being a very good example of that and why that is. But I think it is winnable and within reach from DeSantis. This would be likely a more Republican rebound year. I think Republicans would do well, and I even think they win the popular vote in this scenario. And actually, yeah, so realistically, I think this is how the electoral map would play out in 2024 if DeSantis ran against Biden. Republicans don't have to field really that good of a candidate, as long as it's not a fake rhino Republican like Liz Cheney or really anyone like her. They will win the election against Biden to varying degrees of success depending on the candidate, but either way, they will all win it. I actually might even consider New Hampshire could be tilt in this cycle, and actually I'm going to give it as a tilt. But in this case, this would be a pretty big victory. DeSantis, I'd say, win the popular vote by at least 500,000 to 1 million votes, which is fairly big. It would be a very good victory, and I think DeSantis himself would be a good president. I don't think he's the one for 2024 personally. I think that is still Trump. Now, that doesn't mean DeSantis wouldn't be a good choice if Trump decides not to run. I think he would be one of the best candidates after kind of preceding Trump. There isn't really anyone I'd say who's ready yet to run other than maybe him. So assuming this is a scenario where Trump doesn't run, DeSantis is the best candidate and likely would do the best job. So anyways, that's my breakdown of what a 2024 Biden versus DeSantis election would look like. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like as well. Let me know if there's any kind of content you want to see me do in the future. I will take it under advisement and look into making some more content. Anyways, that's all for now. Hope you guys have a good night.